Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Khalil Jahshan. I'm Executive Director of the Arab Center, Washington, D.C., and I would like to welcome you to this special event regarding Tunisia in transition. And this is the second, actually, in a series with our colleagues and friends at POMED. So on behalf of ACW, I'd like to welcome every one of you for taking time out of your busy schedule and finding your way to -3 below sea level, and which is very difficult to find in Washington, D.C. So we hope to get a few more as they find their way down here in a few minutes. I'd like to, at this time, invite my friend and colleague, Cole Bokenfeld, the Deputy Director for Policy at POMED, to also welcome you on behalf of POMED.
Thank you, Khalil, and thank you to the Arab Center of Washington for your support, co-hosting and sponsoring this event and the visit of our guests this week. We're so glad to have you all here to hear about Tunisia and sort of its progress in its transition, but also the challenges that it still faces. You know, of course, we at POMED have worked extensively on Tunisia over the past several years in supporting its transition, not just for itself, but also the important example it can set for the region, setting a way forward where too much of the news, unfortunately, is often negative. And as sort of a key component of that I think has really been overlooked over the past few years are issues of corruption, which of course you'll hear about from the experts on our panel today, and how key, if you all remember, how key that was of a demand during the protests and the revolution in 2011. But since then, of course, Tunisians and those of us in Washington have turned much of our focus to other issues on the political debates, the economic growth issues and security issues, but really those are all come back and are all tied together by this one issue. So thank you again very much for coming, and we appreciate it.
Thanks, Cole. By way of kind of setting the stage for our discussion, presentations and discussion today, let me just say a few words regarding the subject matter. As all of you know, and knowing just from the faces in the room, I'm familiar with most of you and your work. You're quite aware of the fact that since December 17, 2010, with the birth of the Jasmine Revolution, Tunisia has been the focus of somewhat unprecedented attention by think tankers, by political analysts, by human rights activists, by academic and economic experts, and others throughout the region and beyond and worldwide. The narrative that has emerged over the past 6 years plus, 4 months or so, has been a mixed record of somewhat, I would say, significant but limited success and also significant shortcomings at the same time. So among the gains of the 2010 uprising, one could definitely list some significant development that have been achieved by the Tunisian people, whether it's the end of the Zayn al-Abidin bin Ali regime immediately in 2011, or the formation of the coalition government immediately after that, the parliamentary elections that followed later that year, the presidential elections in December of 2011, the establishment of the Truth and Dignity Commission a couple of years afterwards in 2013, the adoption of the new constitution and its ratification by the parliament in 2014, and so on. Yet, despite these significant and undeniable gains for Tunisia as the cradle of Arab revolts, as it became known, Tunisia continues today to face challenges on various fronts. And these include clusters, if you will, of various challenges. One is the economic challenge cluster, the security challenge cluster, the governance set of governance challenges, human rights challenges, and so on. So the question that begs for an answer this afternoon, or the questions, plural, not just one, otherwise we will end this discussion very quickly. Will the early cohesion of the Tunisian society survive these challenges and continue to steer the country toward long-term stability through democratic transition and reconciliation. Second question, what is needed to revitalize the Tunisian economy to meet the needs of all Tunisians at this critical juncture? 3, will the pragmatic rationality of political leaders to compromise prove to be a lasting phenomenon in Tunisian politics? Will Tunisia achieve, particularly not just internally, but when you look at the regional instability that surrounds it, will Tunisia achieve the necessary internal stability needed during this transition, despite the regional chaos and instability that is having, from time to time at least, a spillover impact on internal difficulties in the country? And what role is there for outside powers to help Tunisia in its transition, and have such powers like the EU and the US, have they really risen up to the challenge that they face and their interests face in the region? So to help answer these and other vital questions, we're privileged today to have an excellent panel of experts and practitioners that are uniquely equipped to offer credible and objective analysis of these complicated issues. They will be speaking in the order I will basically introduce them, and there will be a Q&A session immediately after all 4 speakers complete their presentations. There are cards placed on your seats for your comments and your questions. Please indicate your name and your affiliation. And as you pass these cards, when you're ready, just raise the card and the staff will pick those at the time. Let me basically introduce our speakers at this time. Our first speaker is going to be Shawki Tabib, who's president of Tunisia's National Authority for the Fight Against Corruption. He will speak to us about the country's fight against corruption and its importance for the country's democratic transition, particularly at this difficult juncture. Shawki will be speaking in French, and it will be translated into English for you. Our second speaker to my right is Amin El Ghali, who is the director of Al Kawakibi Democracy Transition Center in Tunis. He will touch on issues related to transitional justice, reconciliation, and related challenges currently being faced by the country. To my left, Sarah Yerkes is a fellow in the Middle East program at Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. She will touch in her remarks on US policy toward Tunisia, both retrospective and going forward, and why these issues are important to US interests. Last but not least, my friend Leila Hilal on the right end of the table there. She is International Security Fellow at New America, who has conducted research on Tunisia's early transition in comparison with the broader countries in the broader Middle East. She will provide a wider perspective on how these issues impact the region. With that said, I would like to also invite you, if you look at the back of the document you were given, in terms of following this event on Twitter, at Arab Center WDC and at POMED, P-O-M-E-D. It's in the back of the document. At this time, I would like to invite Shawki Tabib to proceed with his remarks. This is fine.
Oh là là.
You're already wired.
Voilà. Donc, salam tout le monde. Et, je tiens à remercier bien entendu les organisateurs pour... C'est bon? C'est OK?
Très bon.
Bon.
Allons-y.
Ah, c'est bien. Donc, je commencerai par rappeler l'une des raisons principales du soulèvement ou de la révolution tunisienne contre Ben Ali, et comme vous le savez, fut le caractère mafieux et corrompu de ce régime. Et après la révolution, et bien que des avancées remarquables furent réalisées, notamment en matière politique, la réforme du système et du régime politique, des avancées en matière de liberté d'expression, d'organisation, de presse, mais un échec a été souligné concernant le volet économique et le volet social. Les raisons de cet échec sont, d'après les observateurs du dossier tunisien, et je partage ce point de vue, donc réside essentiellement dans la prolifération du phénomène de la corruption, qui a malheureusement continué à ronger tous les secteurs de l'activité économique, administrative, politique et même judiciaire en Tunisie. Il faudrait souligner aussi que les efforts en matière de lutte contre la corruption pendant les années 2011, 2012, 2013, 2015 furent un échec et étaient insignifiants, et c'est ce qui a permis d'aggraver ce phénomène.
Welcome and thank you, Comed and the Arab Center of Washington for organizing this opportunity. One of the major impetuses behind the Tunisian revolution was the corruption of the mafia-like regime. After the revolution, Tunisia was able to make considerable political progress, notably through redesigning the political system, improving of assembly, as well as general individual and collective liberty. Failures have occurred at the economic and social levels. The reasons for these failures lie essentially in the thorough exploration.
Can you hold the other microphone, the handheld?
Okay.
Yeah, just it's on.
Of corruption through various economic, administrative, political, and even judicial sectors. It must be recognized that the efforts to fight corruption during the years 2000 through 2015 were insufficient, and that this has made corruption worse.
C'est au cours de l'année, début de l'année 2016, qu'une opinion publique et politique a commencé à se forger et à réagir et à prendre conscience que si le phénomène de la corruption continue davantage, la nouvelle Tunisie sera dans peu de temps un État mafieux. Cette prise de conscience nationale a été initiée grâce notamment à la société civile, aux médias et à l'instance nationale de lutte contre la corruption que je préside depuis début 2016. Cette prise de conscience nationale a poussé vers une prise de conscience relative sur le plan politique. Cette prise de conscience politique s'est manifestée par la déclaration de l'actuel gouvernement de l'unité nationale qui a déclaré que la lutte contre la corruption est une priorité nationale et qu'elle est aussi importante que la lutte contre le terrorisme. Il faut reconnaître que l'année 2016 a été une assez bonne année en matière de lutte contre la corruption. En effet, en 2016, il y a eu la promulgation de textes de loi assez importants en la matière, comme la loi sur le libre accès à l'information, la loi sur la protection des témoins et le projet de loi sur la déclaration du patrimoine. Au cours également de cette année, la stratégie nationale de lutte contre la corruption fut enfin approuvée et adoptée. Un collectif de la société civile anti-corruption fut créé et une nette amélioration concernant l'apport du journalisme d'investigation. En ce qui concerne notre instance, l'instance nationale de lutte contre la corruption, donc l'année 2016 a vu le redémarrage des activités de l'instance d'une manière significative. Et à titre d'exemple, on peut citer que durant l'année 2015, seulement 25 dossiers furent déposés à l'instance, dossiers de corruption en 2015, alors que pour l'année 2016, ce nombre a explosé et on a pu enregistrer pas moins de 8 900 dossiers de corruption qui ont été déposés à l'instance.
It is over the course of 2016 that both public and political opinion began to demonstrate an understanding of the fact that if corruption continues, Tunisia will quickly become a mafia state. Awareness of this danger was raised on a national scale thanks to efforts of civil society, of the media, of certain parliamentarians, and of the National Commission for the Fight Against Corruption that I have led since March 2016. This awareness has forced a greater political recognition of the issue, manifest in the declaration of the National Unity Government, which recognizes the fight against corruption as a priority on the same level as the fight against terrorism. It must be recognized that the year 2016 was a relatively positive year for the fight against corruption in Tunisia. Indeed, in 2016, important laws were enacted, notably the law on free access to information and the law on the protection of whistleblowers, while an asset declaration law is currently being drafted. Over the course of this year, the National Strategy for the Fight Against Corruption and for Good Governance was also adopted. Additionally, a civil society alliance was created, there was a net improvement in investigative journalism, and the National Commission for the Fight Against Corruption was able to reinitiate its work in significant ways. As an example of the increase in the work that the National Commission was able to do, only 25 cases were brought to the Commission in 2015, whereas in 2016, 8,900 cases were presented before the Commission.
Mais beaucoup reste à faire. Car, vous le savez, et comme vous devez le deviner, on a perdu beaucoup de temps en matière de lutte contre la corruption, notamment durant les années, comme je l'ai souligné, 2011, 12, 13, 14 et 15. Malheureusement, la corruption a atteint des dimensions dangereuses. Et à titre d'illustration, il faut savoir que 50% de notre économie en Tunisie est devenue informelle. Donc, c'est 50% de l'économie tunisienne qui sont détenus entre les mains de contrebandiers et de groupes mafieux. Il faut aussi souligner que des relations avérées ont été prouvées entre des groupes terroristes provenant de Libye ou de Tunisie et des groupes de contrebandiers qui, bien entendu, utilisent la corruption comme moyen essentiel pour faciliter leur activité. Fallait-il aussi rappeler que la corruption en Tunisie comme ailleurs ronge l'appareil de l'État, accentue les sentiments d'injustice, de rejet et d'exclusion, notamment chez les jeunes et dans les régions marginalisées et défavorisées, ce qui les rend plus vulnérables aux tentations terroristes, entre autres. La corruption est une entrave importante et même capitale au développement économique, social et de ce fait politique. Donc, la réussite dans la transition démocratique en Tunisie, qui est considérée à juste titre comme un exemple de réussite et une exception dans les pays du printemps arabe, cette transaction ne peut se faire qu'en gagnant la guerre contre la corruption. C'est un enjeu stratégique tunisien, mais régional et même international, en raison notamment de l'emplacement de la Tunisie qui est située, faut-il le rappeler, entre l'Algérie et la Libye et à quelques kilomètres seulement des côtes européennes.
However, much is left to be done. A lot of time was lost over the past 6 years, and corruption has been allowed to reach dangerous levels. 50% of the economy is informal, and mutually beneficial relationships have developed between terrorist groups in Libya and in Tunisia and smugglers, thanks to corruption. This corruption and the state apparatus has accentuated the feelings of injustice and of rejection that young people and residents of marginalized regions feel, which renders them more vulnerable to terrorist temptations. Corruption is a crucial impediment to Tunisia's economic and social development,
and to its political stability. The success of the democratic transition in Tunisia, an example of a success out of the Arab Spring, can only be realized by winning the war against corruption. It is a security issue for Tunisia on a national level, but also on a regional and international scale, given Tunisia's location between Algeria and Libya and at a few kilometers away from Europe's coasts.
Toutefois, et je vais finir par cette remarque qui semble, je pense, va vous intéresser davantage, notamment nos amis américains présents dans cette salle. Donc, ce qui nous laisse perplexes, nous autres Tunisiens, en matière de lutte contre la corruption, c'est la position de votre pays à l'égard de ce sujet ô combien sensible. En effet, l'apport des États-Unis pour les efforts nationaux tunisiens en matière de lutte contre la corruption tarde à venir, pour des considérations inexpliquées jusqu'à nos jours et qu'on n'arrive pas à déchiffrer. Alors que certains autres pays se sont d'ores et déjà engagés et impliqués en la matière, comme notamment la Corée du Sud, pas du Nord, l'Allemagne, le PNUD, alors que les États-Unis d'Amérique, comme vous le savez, ont un intérêt stratégique certain à stabiliser la Tunisie en contribuant à la réussite de sa transition démocratique, alors même aussi que les États-Unis d'Amérique peuvent considérablement aider en matière de lutte contre la corruption sur plusieurs volets, dont notamment le renforcement des capacités en matière de protection des témoins, la modernisation des structures administratives publiques tunisiennes, également en matière de communication, réseautage et collaboration entre les centres de recherche et les chercheurs en matière de lutte contre la corruption, appui à la société civile, appui au pouvoir judiciaire, appui au journalisme d'investigation, pour ne citer que ces volets. Et donc, il faut aussi être objectif et souligner qu'il y a une toute petite amélioration avec la nomination de votre nouvel ambassadeur. Et je vais terminer en vous invitant à méditer et à essayer de m'éclairer sur cette réticence américaine et ses raisons vis-à-vis de la lutte contre la corruption en Tunisie. Merci beaucoup.
In terms of the fight against corruption, what leaves us perplexed as Tunisians is the United States' position on the issue. The support of the United States for Tunisia's national efforts to fight corruption are lagging for reasons that are inexplicable to this day, when other countries with less at stake have engaged themselves more in the matter, notably South Korea, Germany, or the UNDP, though the current ambassador to Tunisia has demonstrated a greater interest in supporting Tunisia's anti-corruption efforts than his predecessor. The United States has a strategic interest in Tunisia's stability and the success of its democratic transition. The U.S. can help support Tunisia in its fight against corruption on several fronts, notably through helping Tunisia to build its capacity to protect witnesses, to modernize its public administrative structures, to improve its communications, to collaborate with researchers, to support civil society, judicial authorities, and investigative journalists. To finish, I invite you to judge and consider my perspective on this issue, as well as to help explain the United States' position. Thank you all.
Thank you, Shawki, very much for your remarks. We would move now to Amin Al-Ghali, immediately seated to my right. And just for the sake of those of you who came a little bit late, he is the director of Al-Kawakibi Democracy Transition Center in Tunis, and he will discuss basically issues related to transitional justice, reconciliation, and related challenges being faced in Tunisia today. Amin?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming to listen to some thoughts about Tunisia, about transition in Tunisia that have some impact on transition in the Arab region. Mr. Shawki Tabib mentioned at length the fight against corruption in Tunisia, which is one of the big challenges of our transition. But we have a number of other challenges, a number. We have a hard time putting priorities on these challenges. We've succeeded in some of them. We have modest success in some others, and we have failed in some others. I'll help you, or I'll try to help you draw a picture of these challenges that we've been facing for the past 6-7 years, and will be facing for the next decade or two. One of the first challenges of Tunisian transition has been election. We've somehow succeeded in putting election as the option for the alternation of power. This is, for you, it's so obvious, but for our part of the world, it's not obvious. Usually, in our part of the world, people resort to violence to seize power. In Tunisia now, people talk about election to seize power or to access power. This is a success. It has been a very strong challenge in 2011. We succeeded in this challenge. We succeeded in the election of 2014, and we have good ground to think that we'll succeed in the local election of 2017. And when I'm talking about success, it's not a success of who wins the election. I'm talking about the process. In election, the process is 80% of the challenge. If we succeed in the process, everything else will be accepted. The other challenge that we have faced in Tunisia is the constitution. We spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, 2011, 12, 13, and a little bit of 2014, trying to agree on a constitution that accommodates everyone, accommodates 10 to 11 million Tunisians. A constitution that is written for everyone, not for the winners, but the winners, those who did not win the election, for the minority, majority, for everyone. We say that we have a good constitution. It will take us a few decades to test it. We're already testing it. We'll see how it happens. We have the challenge now of translating this constitution into law. And we are late in this because countries and systems do not apply constitution. They apply a translation of this constitution into laws, into procedures, into decrees. We are late in this, but I hope we'll be able to manage. We have a big concern of security. As any single country that goes through a transition process, security becomes shaky. And our security is shaky because of a lot of phenomena. One of them is that security has been the tool of the dictatorship in the past. So at the fall of the dictatorship, there has been a dismantling of this security and democratic security apparatus. We're trying to build it, but while in the process of building it, we are facing the challenge of Libyan war next door. Libya is a big challenge, as mentioned a little bit by Mr. Shawki Tabib, but on the security issue, it is a big challenge. The impact of Libyan civil war reached all the way Nigeria, let alone Tunisia, next door, small country, no army or very small army, in transition, and the impact is so big that we are still trying to manage, especially that there is no vis-a-vis in Libya. There is no government in Libya. You have to deal with different people at different times. We have the challenge of human rights, respecting human rights. It is somehow mentioned in our laws, somehow mentioned in our constitution, but it takes much more than this. It takes a culture of respect and promotion of human rights to be on the safe side. And this is new to us. It's new. We've always had advocates of promotion and protection of human rights in the past decades, but now to make it a system of governance or embedded in the governance of the country, it's a big challenge, especially when we have security issues. When we have attacks and bombs, it becomes either or. Are you going for security or going for human rights? It's very challenging for us. It's challenging for you guys. You've lived through a decade of this challenge. It's challenging for many European countries. But all of you you have a culture of human rights. You have a tradition of human rights. You lived through this for years. For us, it's very new. When we tried to install this new culture of human rights, we had the security challenge. And it puts in jeopardy whatever we've written in our law, whatever we thought it's an easy task to take. On the other side, we have failed in some stuff. Or I would say, to put it in a positive manner, we have limited success. We've had limited success in fighting corruption. I hope that, as mentioned previously, 2016-17 are the years of fighting corruption, of re-putting this subject on the table of the debate. And it is the case. It is on the table of the national debate. We're not seeing results yet, but at least we have a public awareness on the subject. We failed, or we have limited success in terms of transitional justice. We've advocated for this process since the day one of revolution, because we thought this is the engine that would lead the reform process in the country. Unfortunately, starting from 2014, when we had the National Commission on Transitional Justice, they had a limited success in this field. The powers facing the reform process have been stronger than the powers of this reform in terms of transitional justice. It had a success. It has the success that people who are not in power did not resort to violence. The case of Libya, the case of Egypt, the case of Yemen, a little bit of Bahrain, but at least in Tunisia, people who, let's say, of the old regime did not resort to violence to live in the country. Maybe not yet to regain power or whatever, to enter the political game, but at least they did not resort to arm to stay alive in the country. Libya is the perfect illustration. So we'll have a very mild transitional justice process. It will not go deep enough to go and to reform the process or to reform the country. It is only one of the actors or agents of reform. We have others. Of course, we have civil society and media. Civil society and media have been leading the momentum of reform of the country, and they're still trying to lead it with some fatigue, of course, of civil society, with some fatigue of media, with some effort to capture these dynamics by the political society. But still, there is a dynamic of civil society to lead this process. The other agent of reform in the country is the group of, or a number of authorities that we have, independent authorities. The authority to fight corruption is one of them. The Independent Election Commission is one of them. The one to fight torture, the one to regulate and moderate the media. We have a number of them. The Constitutional Court, the Judiciary Supreme Council will have about 12 of them in the national new scheme of governance of the country. These are among the actors of change. The other actors of change are international partners, countries, NGOs, cooperation agencies, all of those who are trying to support Tunisia for the sake of Tunisia, for the sake of the region. Everyone now is interested in seeing an experience of transition succeeding in the Arab region, to keep the hope for the other countries. And if I may suggest one recommendation in this effort or in this respect, is to support these actors of reform, to invest in these actors of reform, because they will have, or they will be, the multiplier effect and the national actors or the on-the-ground agents that would support the transition in the country. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Amin. We will now move to Sarah Yerkes, and who will be talking about U.S. policies toward Tunisia in terms of background and future prospects.
Thank you. Thank you to POMED and to the Arab Center for having me. I'm very honored to be here on such an esteemed panel. And I think, we saw both the previous two panelists outline the challenges facing Tunisia, but as an outsider, I just want to applaud what Tunisia has accomplished. And I think particularly in the realms of transitional justice and corruption that we've been speaking about, Tunisia has accomplished many great things, although there is still a big road ahead. And on the transitional justice process, I would say that Tunisia has done a great job in incorporating civil society, citizenry, the media, and this is something that should be applauded and should be emanated, I think, throughout the region. And one of the strengths of the Tunisian approach, in my mind, is that it delayed the transitional justice process, which allowed for the citizen and civil society input and led to a more thoughtful, deliberative process. And in particular, as I mentioned, this inclusivity of civil society and of Tunisians from across the country, not just from the traditional coastal areas, is a model that should be repeated. But by prioritizing the political transition over the transitional justice process, the approach has at times tested the Tunisian public's patience, which I think Amin alluded to. And separately, I would say that holding public sessions regarding transitional justice is an effective approach and an innovative approach. However, it was troubling to see that President Espepsi and others in the government didn't publicly embrace these sessions. I think that's going to be ultimately harmful to the transitional justice process going forward. So let me speak a little bit about the United States and what the US can do in moving Tunisia's transition forward, particularly on these issues of transitional justice and corruption and transparency. So I would say, I appreciate Mr. Tabib's suggestions, and I think that these are good ones. But I think, one of the big things the United States can do, and I think should be doing more of, is holding Tunisia accountable. And I'll just say that a few years ago when I was at the State Department working on these issues, a Tunisian scholar said to me, "We want the United States to treat Tunisia like a democracy." And I think he's right. We tend to compare Tunisia to other countries in the MENA region, but we should be comparing Tunisia to electoral and transitioning democracies. So what that means practically is that Tunisia might be the recipient of some tough love. First, I would say that the United States should be calling Tunisia out when they engage in behavior that's not befitting of a democracy, and corruption is a key example here. We shouldn't be silent, and we should hold Tunisia to the highest standards. It does not do us or the Tunisians any good to ignore abuses that are ongoing. And from an international community perspective, democracies are held to a higher standards than autocracies when it comes to things like protecting human rights, fighting corruption, and providing transparency. And I would think that Tunisia would welcome this pressure as constructive, an opportunity to move forward. On transparency and corruption specifically, the United States and other donors should focus anti-corruption training on the government at the executive level, the parliament, and eventually the local official level once the local elections take place. And I think it's important here for the United States and other donors to help the Tunisian government draw links between corruption and instability, as Mr. Tabib pointed out, as well as to point out the negative economic impacts of corruption. Not only are there real and serious implications for the ability of Tunisia to attract international investment if it's perceived as a country ripe with corruption, but more transparency leads to more efficient government and helps quell unrest. Full government transparency won't lead to the end of protests, nor should it, but often people are angry when they believe government is hiding something from them. And taking away that trigger by shedding light on government activity can help quell popular unrest. The second is that the United States and others should help build bridges between government and civil society. Tunisian civil society organizations have been remarkable at the watchdog role, I think better than anywhere else in the world, including the United States. But I think one of the issues right now is that civil society has been unable to connect with government. Calling out government and pointing out problems is only the first step. For Tunisia to fully consolidate its democratic transition, civil society needs to serve as a bridge between the people and the government. And something I've written about before is more cross-pollination between civil society and government, for example. Donors can help fund internships for young people within government to see how things work and make connections with government officials. You can create exchange programs between government and civil society. And ensuring civil society has a real voice within government is a key here, and I think there's a lot that donors can help here, not to have civil society just be treated with lip service. And I will say I also see some opportunities for Tunisia going forward, and the big one is the municipal elections. As the country is still writing the decentralization law, the United States and others can advise the Tunisian government on how to craft a law that both actually devolves power to the local institutions and their elected officials and prevents further regional disparity. There's also an opportunity both in law and in practice to ensure full transparency of the local governing structures. The local level is where people feel government most directly. It's essential for the government of Tunisia to develop direct and transparent channels for citizen engagement at the local level. And even the most basic steps of having a phone number or a website where citizens can report issues, having a physical space where citizens can go to connect with their officials, like a US congressional office, for example, it might seem very basic, but it's important both for transparency as well as for developing a culture of citizen engagement. And I also think this decentralization process has the potential to correct past injustices and set the country on the right path forward. Tunisia has an innovative concept of victim region within the transitional justice process that is psychologically important for traditionally disadvantaged regions to record their past injustices, but is also preventative. It allows the government of Tunisia to develop mechanisms to ensure that Tunisians, regardless of where they live, have equal access to education, employment, usable roads, and others. And one thing I would say specifically related to the United States here is that Tunisia is at the very beginning stages of developing a compact with the Millennium Challenge Corporation. This is an opportunity to provide significant funding stream for projects in the interior that I hope really does benefit the country. So I'll just say finally that I think there clearly are many challenges, but there's also opportunities. And I think one opportunity is something that we can see right here, which is that there's a growing interest in Tunisia within the United States. And I think, as we go to more events and have people coming and have these conversations happening, it's really important that we're connecting our two countries together for Americans to hear from Tunisians, to hear what the problems are, and for Tunisians to also connect with Americans. And I hope that going forward, the two countries can work together because it's in both of our interests for Tunisia to stay on the right path. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Last but not least, Layla Hilal, who will put all this stuff in regional perspective for us.
Thank you, Khalil. Thank you to the Arab Center and POMAD for this invitation. I welcome the chance to contribute to the discussion on Tunisia. I was in the country for the first election, the Constituent Assembly elections in 2011. I was there as an election monitor on behalf of the Carter Center, and I was sent to Siliana, which is one of the interior provinces in the country. And so I saw firsthand what is often referred to as one of the biggest challenges of the country, which is to correct the imbalance between the interior and the coastal part of the country and the capital. But also one of the things that I witnessed in Siliana was we were approached often by people, many who were complaining about election irregularities, seeing the division between secularists and people that were supporting Ennahda. Was one division that was very apparent at the time, but also what was quite impressed upon me was the extent to which you have highly educated Tunisians, particularly men, who are very anxious to contribute to society, who are suffering from high levels of unemployment. And this is something very particular to Tunisia, I think, is the degree of investment that was made under Ben Ali and his predecessor in the educational sector. So there is this vast amount of talent and desire in the country to contribute to change. And obviously one of the challenges facing the country is as has been pointing out, is not negating or losing that desire to contribute to change and finding opportunities for people to participate, whether it be at the NGO level or at the governmental level. And I think too often in the Arab world, I think when we see people who want to have a positive impact, they think to go to the NGO sector, whereas, as Amin pointed out, and Sarah pointed out, we need also to encourage people to participate in government, and so government then needs to be able to show that they are up to the challenge in making a difference. And I think Tunisia is really a remarkable example in this sense. And I think we have much to learn from the country. But I think just to put a regional benchmark on the issue of corruption, it is one of the major, if not the major challenge facing the MENA, and probably all states considered, and you see is what's happening in the U.S. It's an increasing frontline issue here. But in the Arab world, just in terms of statistical indicators, Transparency International ranks MENA countries, 90% of them below 50, the mark of 50, with 100 being the least corrupt and 1 being the most. And so for 90% of MENA countries to be ranking below 50, it means the region is failing in addressing corruption. And 5 of the 10 poorest scoring countries are MENA countries, and they're the ones facing significant levels of conflict, particularly Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and Libya. So we see this important nexus between security, conflict, fragility, and the ability to stave off corruption. But beyond sort of what may be standard liberal markers of corruption versus anti-corruption, which the liberal markers are, I think, the main ones used to score these countries. I think the region as a whole faces a challenge because the society is a relational one, and it's one that is built on maintaining networks, maintaining good relationships. I mean, WASTA is a major issue facing WASTA, or nepotism, is a major challenge, and I think the flip side regionally of this problem is that it also creates resilient societies, and so I think that we need to spend a lot of time looking at how Tunisia is dealing with its corruption challenges, and we also pay attention to how the outside world is assessing the MENA in terms of where it stands on corruption issues. But ultimately, we need to try to build an authentic anti-corruption agenda for the MENA as a whole. And again, I think Tunisia's great strides in this area can be useful for us who work on other countries, and hopefully to do so more in partnership with Tunisian. I want to just comment on sort of 2 lessons learned that I think are important to pay attention to when looking at Tunisia. Maybe 3, actually. One is that change does not come overnight, and we've all seen this in the context of the euphoria of 2011 giving way to resurgent authoritarianism. But the lesson that Amin really speaks to, I think, is that the change is a process. And I think that particularly when Americans look at the Middle East and North Africa, they think of binaries. And they apply binaries. It's Islamic or secular, it's good or bad, it's security or stability. And I think that one of the benefits of being Tunisia, perhaps, is that and the disadvantages is that you're not in the limelight. So perhaps you have the ability to see things out through a process. But obviously, you're also working against time because you want to address the lack of trust that citizens have in government, and rebuild trust as you rebuild your systems. But I think ultimately, I mean, even if you look at Syria, for instance, there are grassroots effort to see change, even if at the immediate level it's a very negative story. But so we need to give societies in the MENA a chance to change over time and to contend with the complexities and the contradictions that exist. And I think that the two lessons I wanted to comment on was that there is an intersection between what would be an anti-corruption agenda and transitional justice. And I think one interesting avenue that Tunisia can lend insight on is sort of how the interventions and outcomes that one sees on transitional justice and anti-corruption can help us understand how to manage change in very complex places like the MENA. And then secondly, I think, is that change requires multi-actors. It's not just government, it's not just adopting the laws and the scaffolding of protecting whistleblowers or providing free access to information. I think Arab states in general are very good at erecting the facade of change by adopting formal measures. But in order to actually see through these processes to an end result of a better situation for citizens, we need to involve the media, we need to involve thought leaders, we need think tanks from the region coming forth and helping us define a more authentic agenda which deals with the complexities. We need good governmental actors, we need external supporters, but we all need to work together, and I think Tunisia also is useful for us in understanding that the multi-actor aspect to transitions and drawing on those lessons going forward. Thank you.
Wow, right on time. All right, thank you very much. We would like to spend the balance of our time engaged in the art of conversation, which means it's your turn. Please use the cards on your seat or the seat next to you to indicate your name, your affiliation, and preferably a question. If you went to medical school, use somebody else's handwriting so I can read them. And I'll be more than glad to try to cover as many of these as possible. Okay. And if you would like to address your question to a particular panelist, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll address it to the whole panel, and we'll practice democracy. David Ottaway, Wilson Center. Given all these problems discussed, what are the prospects for another uprising? In Tunisia, right? Or Arab world? Tunisia.
Maybe no, comme disait Yasser Arafat. Allah yarhamou.
Yeah. Amin, you wanna? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think the prospect of a revolution are quite weak in Tunisia, but the prospect of unrest are quite high. We are seeing some continuous unrest going up and down, and now the curve is up. We are seeing a lot of social unrest from people who do not see, are not going to the street to overthrow the regime, but they are going to the street because they do not see the fruits of the revolution. 6 or 7 years of patience, and they do not see anything coming out. So they are tired of the revolution, tired of the transition, and the worst thing is that they are disillusioned. Some people are not trusting the transition anymore. They think that we've gone through all of this process, and we are facing the same unemployment, higher inflation, less job opportunities, or career opportunities, so they're not happy anymore. So they're not going to for a result, a prize as a result, but just unhappy with the system, unhappy with the system that does not deliver to them.
Sérieux, je pourrais répondre par ce qu'a dit un certain analyste à qui je partage son point de vue. Il a dit il est très peu probable que 2 générations soient effectuées par une seule génération. 2 révolutions par une seule génération. C'est peu probable. Donc, mais je pense malheureusement qu'on va continuer à assister à des perturbations d'ordre politique et social et économique, comme on est en train de le constater ces jours-ci du côté de Tataouine, El Kef, Kerouan et toutes ces régions qui ont longtemps souffert de la marginalisation, de l'exclusion. Ces jeunes issus de ces régions et qui sont dans une situation de désespérance. Toutefois, je pense que notre pays, pour être stable, a besoin de quelqu'un qui leur montre à ces jeunes, à ces régions, un cap et qui soit un leadership crédible.
To cite an analyst that I agree with, I think it's very unlikely that a single generation will see 2 revolutions. However, I will continue to see unrest particularly in marginalized regions that have long suffered this marginalization, regions like Tatooine and Kef, and stability will need someone to show them credible leadership.
De 2 conditions, un cap clair et un leadership crédible. Cap, le cap.
Direction.
Vision, la vision et le cap, c'est 2 choses un peu plus différentes. C'est-à-dire qu'il nous montre où on va. Voilà.
Direction.
Voilà. Comme l'a fait Bourguiba au début de l'indépendance. Il a dit, voilà le cap. Il faut construire.
All right, that's good. This question is addressed to Leila. Can you speak to the challenges of security sector corruption, and how can you as security assistants be applied in a way that would lessen corruption in the security sector, or at least avoid exacerbating these problems? This is from Robert Watson.
Well, that's a huge question, and I'm not a security sector reform specialist. And I'm hoping others can help me out with this question.
All right. Others feel free to jump in too.
But I mean, I think, let's say how Tunisia was forced to. So security remains a big challenge in Tunisia, right? The majority of corruption complaints, as I understand it, are being lodged against the police and the security sector. On the other hand, there were not huge investments made in the security sector, and it was the army that actually stepped down and allowed or enabled the ultimate regime change to happen and ushering Ben Ali out. So you have that sort of situation, but I think what the issue is that states have really used the security sector to monopolize their political control over citizens and mobilized it for nefarious purposes. And I think that impulse is going to be one that's hard to restrain, because it's a natural instinct, and you ultimately have to root out bad actors, if you will. In other cases like Syria, you have to actually dismantle the security apparatus, which is sort of extra. It's beyond the state. It's an extra branch of government that is superfluous to the functioning of services and protection of citizens. So I think the challenges might require a state by state approach. But it's nonetheless one of the big questions for seeing through transition.
Si je peux ajouter quelque chose. Moi, je suis, contrairement à l'opinion générale, un peu sceptique concernant le fait de stigmatiser le secteur de la sécurité et les policiers. Je vais vous dire pourquoi. Parce que, tout d'abord, effectivement, les enquêtes d'opinion montrent que le secteur de la sécurité, les douanes, la santé et les collectivités locales, notamment les municipalités, etc., sont les 4 secteurs qui sont pointés par le doigt par les Tunisiens lorsqu'on leur demande où se situe, d'après vous, la corruption. Et c'est tout à fait normal, parce que le Tunisien, il stigmatise les secteurs ou l'administration avec laquelle il est en contact permanent. C'est le policier qui l'arrête lorsqu'il n'a pas sa ceinture de sécurité. Et donc, pour échapper à l'amende, c'est le citoyen ou bien c'est le policier qui te demande de lui donner 10 ou 20 dinars, c'est le douanier, c'est à l'hôpital qu'on a recours à donner un petit bakshish pour être donc mis en tête de liste, etc. Et pour la municipalité, on y va pour avoir un permis de construire, pour avoir un extrait de naissance ou un extrait de décès. Et on paie moyennant ça 5 ou 10 dinars. Mais les secteurs les plus touchés, les secteurs l'hémorragie essentielle de la corruption en Tunisie, ça se situe au niveau des marchés et des achats publics. C'est là où perd le trésor public, les finances publiques, pas moins d'environ 2000 milliards de noumidim, c'est-à-dire environ 1 milliard de dollars par an. C'est 25% de la somme globale allouée à ce titre à cause de la corruption. Les policiers, la santé et tout ça, c'est la petite corruption. Mais il faut s'attaquer à la petite corruption. Don't worry, donc elle sait ce que je suis en train de dire, donc pas de problème. Je le répète depuis 5 jours, la même chose. Donc, il faut s'attaquer à la petite corruption, s'attaquer à la moyenne corruption et surtout s'attaquer à la grande corruption. Là où on trouve les gros requins, là où on trouve des ministres, là où on trouve des PDG des entreprises publiques, etc., etc.
So I'm skeptical of stigmatizing the police and security. Public opinion views customs, municipalities, health, and security as the most corrupt sectors, which is normal because they're stigmatizing the sectors with which they have the most and regular contact. With petty corruption, for example, police pulling you over for not wearing your seatbelt and you pay a small bribe, or similar kinds of corruption with customs officials or at municipalities or in hospitals. But the sectors, in reality, that are most touched by corruption are public contracts and government procurement, which loses about $1 billion a year for Tunisia. So it's important to focus on petty corruption, medium corruption, but also corruption at the higher level with ministers and heads of public enterprises.
All right. Do you want to add anything else?
Non. J'aime bien
C'est
cette
tout?
méthode. C'est-à-dire, on vous donne des petits bouts de papier. Ça, je vais le faire en revenant à Tunis.
Très bien.
Parce qu'il y a des gens qui, pour poser des questions, ils donnent des interventions, des conférences. Donc, c'était
And the two don't work together. Too long answers and too long questions. Okay. Sarah, This is for you from Nizar. Should the efforts and funding for these, like first year, focus on top-down and institutions, or bottom-up, spread to grassroots organizations? And the other one is another question I would like to address to you is, how is the Tunisian government and Tunisian private sector dealing with the serious youth unemployment problem, and with regards to particularly how the U.S. can help in this regard? This is from Greg.
Sure. So I think, Nizar, what you're asking, you're saying it should there be both top-down and bottom-up assistance?
Yeah, so the argument with Tunisia is that Bourguiba, a lot of what happened in Tunisia thanks to the top-down Bourguiba, a lot of scaffolding happened top-down.
I see, okay.
Are we in a stage here where we need more bottom-up, or
Right.
again, because of transition, certain things that can really need to happen top-down?
Sure. So I think on the political system, that's been Tunisia's biggest success, is the top-down political infrastructure, if you will. So I think it's actually now time for more bottom-up, and I think, again, civil society is very effective and incredibly powerful and professional, and I think they're doing a great job, but they need to evolve. They're stuck in kind of this watchdog role of doing a great job of seeing what government does, taking note, conveying that to the public, but there need to be these bridges between the top-down and the bottom-up. As far as youth unemployment, I mean, it's a huge problem. Obviously, we're seeing massive protests in the South, for example, that are related to youth unemployment, unemployment in general, but particularly among the youth. And one of the things the United States has done is just on a very small level, but we do have some programming. I'm not part of the government anymore, but I should say, do have some programming through USAID that has been very successful at job skills training and job matching. One of the problems that we're seeing is, you have very educated people, but their skills don't match what employers are looking for. So there is this effort now to kind of identify what those skills are, match them to employers. But this is at a very small level, and I think the way the government has been responding to this, and has been a lot of pressure from the protests, is by just employing people in the public sector. And that's not a sustainable way to handle this problem. I don't think it's effective, and it's actually making the problem worse rather than better. So this is something that's going to take years and years and years to address, unfortunately, but there are some small efforts by some donors.
All right, Amin Ghali, you thought you were off for the evening, so we got quite a few items for you. VOA, Voice of America, Shinawi would like to know, is Tunisia adopting the transition justice mechanisms, including accountability for crimes of the past and reforming security forces and compensations for the victims of these crimes? And I guess that's also related to your turf, if you'd like to comment on that one. And then Dr. Naqshbandi from American University, corruption is spread all over the world. Are you trying to emulate Singapore or the United States? Do you have a model in mind? And Dr. Sharkawi from George Mason, Tunisia remains an exception to the violent shifts in the region, as you've indicated with Libya. Is there a Tunisian formula of civil society that can be applied to other Arab nations? And I guess, Layla, you can weigh in on that one. All right, I mean, that's yours.
Thank you. I'll start by the second one.
All right.
Actually, I'll start by a little comment on security sector reform. In previous experiences of transition in other parts of the world, we've seen that security sector reform is very important. But it's important not to attack the security sector from year one of the transition. It takes time to address this issue. You cannot open fronts all over. You need to keep some institution of the state still holding together. The only thing is that we cannot allow the security sector to reposition itself as a tool of the dictatorship. We need to find the balance between the two, the reform and the stability. Stability not of the regime, but stability of the country. And it looks like, it's very early to assess this, that we are on the right track in this. We've managed to keep the security sector in its small corner of security, and now there is a growing effort from international partners of Tunisia, but also from Tunisian actors, to start reforming the security sector. One of them is to fight corruption within the security sector. On the transitional justice process, we are almost at the end of the life cycle of the Commission of Transitional Justice, what we call the IVD, Instance, Vérité et Dignité, Truth and Dignity Commission. This commission is supposed to stay or to manage the transitional justice process for 4 years, with the possible renewal for a 15th year, but they will not get it. We only have 1 year left for the life of the commission, but the transitional justice process is not over. The commission has not been able to deliver on what it was supposed to deliver. But we hope that this commission would be able to deliver a report full of recommendation, and the process would be managed beyond the life of the IVD, because the IVD was actually the problem of the transitional justice process. Of course, we need a commission, but unfortunately, the commission has not been a positive actor into the process. So we hope that our process of transitional justice will not end in June 2018. It would go beyond, as it went beyond in every single experience of transitional justice from South Africa to Morocco to Latin America. So even if we do not succeed in doing some of the components of this transitional justice process in Tunisia, we'll do it later on. Fighting corruption, yes, I hope to become Singapore of the Arab region. It's a little bit too optimistic, but at least we need to move to a phase where corruption is not an impediment to our transition. As of now, we might fail in our transition because of this corruption. We can maybe accept corruption as a component of life. Some others, I hope Mr. Shawqi Tbib is a zero tolerance person, where he doesn't allow any level of corruption, but we cannot be tolerant to such systematic corruption. It's a system. I mean, the efforts of 2011 and inquiries and reports that have been published in Tunisia shows that corruption is a systematic problem. It's not on the side, it's within the system. We cannot accept this. We are still fighting the system of corruption. We hope that we'll put it on the side. What was the last one?
Good question. I turned my cards already.
Exception to violence. Is there a formula for, yes, civil society. The formula is to open civil space, and you'll have enough people to jump in and to get engaged. Do not accept to have restricted spaces in the Arab region. Spaces where citizens cannot be interested in the public sphere. This is what's happening in the Arab region. This is what's happening from all the way from Oman to Mauritania. All of these countries limited the civil space. Tunisia too limited the civil space. But one of the gains of the Tunisian transition has been this opening of civil space, giving this access to citizens to contribute through political parties, through civil society, in media, being just an active person. And when you have citizens that are when you have residents that are active, they'll become citizens, and they'll be the best watchdog to the government actions.
Shawqi, John Sullivan from George Mason would like to know, what are you doing about the informal sector?
Informal sector. Mais je voudrais peut-être, comme vous l'avez invité tout à l'heure, à répondre concernant les modèles à suivre.
Go ahead.
Voilà. Donc, je pense qu'on est tout le monde d'accord qu'il y a en matière de lutte contre la corruption 3 modèles. Il y a le modèle des pays qui ont une grande tradition citoyenne, ils ont une grande tradition, une grande stabilité concernant leurs institutions, notamment les pays scandinaves et la Suisse. D'ailleurs, ces pays sont dans le classement de Transparence internationale sur la tête du podium. Il y a l'exemple de Singapour, que Amin adore particulièrement, il y a l'exemple de la Corée du Sud. Nous, je pense qu'on doit se comparer à ces deux derniers modèles, qui sont la Corée du Sud ou bien Singapour, parce qu'il y a beaucoup de similitudes, notamment dans le temps. Ces deux pays étaient comme nous dans les années 50, des pays nouvellement indépendants, et n'avaient pas à l'époque une grande conscience sur le plan citoyenneté, etc. Toutefois, le modèle du Singapour ne peut plus et ne peut pas être appliqué en Tunisie parce que c'est un modèle qui avait comme base un grand leadership, même un peu totalitaire. Et donc, nous, certains Tunisiens sont tentés maintenant de revendiquer ce modèle, mais je pense que malheureusement pour eux, et peut-être heureusement pour nous autres très démocrates, ce modèle n'a pas les moyens d'une telle politique en Tunisie. En Tunisie, maintenant, il est hors question que quelqu'un vienne et dire, voilà, je suis le chef, voilà ce que vous devez faire, comme l'a fait par exemple Bourguiba. Donc, c'est hors question. Aujourd'hui, même à Tataouine, ils ont dit dégage au chef du gouvernement qui est la première autorité politique tunisienne. Sam, c'est bon? Ouais, bon. Je vais parler un petit peu des modèles de Corée du Sud que je considère.
So there are three different kinds of models to follow. The first being countries with strong traditions, strong citizen traditions, and strong state institutions like the Scandinavian countries. But there are also the Singapore and South Korea models, which are more applicable to Tunisia. They have more similarities. These two countries were in similar situations in the 1950s where they didn't have large citizen consciousness. The Singapore model can't be applied in Tunisia, however, because the political climate wouldn't accept it. It requires a strong, almost totalitarian leadership. And some in Tunisia may argue for this, but unfortunately for them, and fortunately for strong believers in democracy like Shawki, the people seem to be very against this. For example, in Tatooine recently, protesters shouted "dégage" or "get out" to the prime minister during his visit.
Donc, concernant le modèle sud-coréen, oui, c'est un modèle qui peut être exécuté et réalisé en Tunisie, un modèle en matière de lutte contre la corruption. C'est un modèle qui est axé sur trois grands axes. Le premier axe, c'est la multitude des barrières anti-corruption, c'est-à-dire ils ont une institution très forte, outillée de beaucoup de moyens en matière de lutte contre la corruption. C'est un premier barrage. Il y a bien sûr le barrage de l'autorité judiciaire, il y a le barrage de la société civile, il y a le barrage aussi également de l'exécutif. Le deuxième axe, c'est la modernisation de leur administration. Tout en Corée du Sud se fait de loin. Donc, les marchés publics, les services que le citoyen demande à l'administration, tout se fait par le moyen de plateformes électroniques. Et également, ils ont un pouvoir judiciaire très important. La preuve, ils ont délogé il y a quelques jours leur présidente pour un simple soupçon de corruption.
So the South Korea model has three main axes. The first being there's a multitude of barriers to corruption, including strong state institutions, a strong judiciary, and strong civil society and executive. The second is the modernization of their institutions, which allows for distance between the citizen and the services. So in government procurement and citizen services are done electronically. And then the third is there's a strong judiciary that was able to go after their leader for suspicion of corruption.
Concernant la lutte contre le secteur informel ou le commerce informel et la contrebande, moi je suis de l'avis qui préconise qu'une partie de ce secteur informel ou de ce commerce informel peut et doit être digérée. Mais il faut être intraitable vis-à-vis de certains genres de commerce parallèles. Et là, je pointe du doigt le commerce des produits alimentaires subventionnés. Il faut noter qu'en Tunisie, il existe une caisse de compensation censée aider les couches défavorisées à avoir accès et acheter des moyens, des produits de base comme le lait, comme l'huile, comme la farine, comme le sucre, les médicaments également. Cette caisse coûte à l'État la bagatelle de 4 000 milliards de nos millimes, c'est environ 2 millions de dollars, pas 2 millions, 2 milliards de dollars environ, et un quart de cette caisse va dans les poches des contrebandiers qui acheminent ces médicaments, qui acheminent ces produits alimentaires de base, notamment vers la Libye, vers le Niger, vers le Mali, etc. Et c'est une grande perte pour la caisse de l'État. Il faut être intraitable avec ce genre de commerce parallèle. Et pour cela, il faut bien entendu être intraitable avec leurs collaborateurs, notamment dans l'administration tunisienne, qui leur octroie soit des licences pour exercer le commerce en gros, soit bien entendu du côté des douanes.
So a large part of the informal sector involves their kind of food stamp system where there's money to help people who can't afford food or medication, the funds are around $2 billion. A quarter of this goes into the hands of traffickers who send food and medication abroad. And that this really needs to be looked at carefully and cracked down on, as well as their collaborators in the administration and the Indian customs.
All right, our time is up, but I have two questions that I must ask because of who asked them. The two representing the youth of Tunis are here. Rania and Sausan have asked two important questions, one addressed to Layla and one that I'm going to address to you, Sarah. The first one is, do you think this is the right time for the youth of Tunisia to get involved in the process? And considering what we've been hearing about the U.S. budget, is there any money left to do any of this constructive stuff?
Yeah.
We could reverse, yeah, that's fine. 1 minute each. Please, go ahead.
I mean, on the U.S., I think the benefit of Tunisia is that they haven't been getting that much money. So hopefully, I mean, I hope there are no cuts. I think we finally reached the point where the aid levels have been sort of normalized. So I really hope that there are no cuts. But you know, even if there's a 10% cut, the budget has been so low, unfortunately, that it wouldn't be a huge impact, I think.
All right. So the youth question. I mean, I suppose it was a rhetorical question, but the youth are the promise and hope and should not give up, and look to their possibility as being one of, in different roles, including government and NGOs, and taking the advice of Amin and going beyond, and others of going beyond being just a mere watchdog, to being actors in society.
Francesca, your question was very good. I wish we had time to answer it. I'm going to just arbitrarily answer it. I think security, I've been listening to my colleagues here, Shawki particularly, for the past couple of days. So I've learned the answer to this question. It's addressed to you. The most corrupt sector and kind of in terms of quantity and the most dangerous type of corruption, I think in terms of quantity, probably the security addressed at the security apparatuses, if you will. And purchasing power of the state is the most dangerous corruption. Procurement is the most dangerous aspect of corruption. Thank you very much for being here. Look to see you in a future event. Thank you very much, everybody.